Hello everybody, my name's Ollie. Welcome to another edition of The Watch Collector. Today we're going to have a look at two watches, both from Czapek, and we'll get into reason why we have not one but two very shortly. Before we do that, obligatory wristwatch check. Today I'm wearing the Singer reimagined Flytrack. So what I wanted to do with this video was bring up the debate of, does size matter? And if it does, is bigger better, is smaller better, or are you just happy just having any size at all? We're gonna talk about this in relation to Czapek and their stainless steel model, the Antarctic Passage de Drake. Forgive my pronunciation. Now, of course, when Czapek was relaunched, shall we say, in 2015, they didn't have a stainless steel model in their range. They were purely complicated or standard dress watches, starting with the Kaiderberg, which over the years I have evolved to become a massive fan of. Then around 3 years or so ago now, they introduced the Antarctic, their integrated sports stainless steel piece. And I think it's probably fair to say that it was met with almost universal acclaim. In a saturated market of brands trying to muscle in on the situation that had been created, of course, by Audemars Piguet and the Royal Oak in 1972, followed by the Nautilus and countless others since then, they needed something in their armory that would allow them to go after that very broad and important sector of the market. And that's what the Antarctic enabled them to do. The two versions I've got here are identical in terms of their face, as you can probably see. They are the glacier blue versions. Now, get this the right way around. Blue is such it's almost a universal color, isn't it, for sports watches in general. You think of the way that, whether it's the Royal Oak has been identified over the years, Nautilus, whether variations of that have entered into the sports range, whether it's by Rolex or Omega. As soon as you put a blue face on a watch, it flies off the shelves. And certainly when Czapek released the Glacier Blue, that was no different whatsoever. Now, before we get to the size, 38.5 and 40.5, let's just talk about some of the other things that I think Czapek did really well in terms of when they released this piece. So for those who were able to order one, you were actually able to specify different parts of your watch. So for example, you can see here you've got the alternating links of brushed satin finish. If you wanted it, you could have them all in satin. You could, for example, specify at the 12 o'clock, you could have simply batons or Arabic numerals. You may, hopefully if it comes out on the camera, see that this second hand has got a red tip. You could ask for no tip at all, simply keeping it in chrome like the rest of the hand, or you could have the entire second hand in red if you wanted it. Just really nice touches that allowed you to feel like, of course, you're not getting a bespoke watch, more of a made to measure. Just like if you walk into a shop, you buy a jacket off the peg and you have it taken in just a touch to make it more specific to you. And I thought that was a really nice way of Czapek introducing a level of customizability without making it prohibitively expensive. The finishing is as you would expect from Czapek, top notch. The bezel is very nicely done. The crown and the crown guard, the way that that's integrated, it's very subtle. And I think that's to real testament of Czapek, the way that they created and thought about the case, and also the way that this watch represents itself, and perhaps more importantly, how it represents the wearer. Now, before we get back onto the elephant in the room and that size, of course you have what they've become renowned for now, which is not only the finishing of their movements, but also the architecture. I love the way that the bridges are done. I love the way that you have almost complete skeletonization. To be able to see the cogs mesh and connect with each other is just one of those things that I think as all watch collectors we love. And of course, with the Chapek Antarctic, you have a recycled full platinum rotor that provides power for the movement. So getting on to size. So here we have, on the left-hand side, you've got 38.5 millimeters in diameter, and on the right, you've got 40.5. I've always subscribed to the view that, of course, it's going to depend on the size of your wrist, but if this is for a gentleman, then the 40.5, in my preference, would be the one to go for. And I can say that by having put my money where my mouth is, by the fact that I have a salmon version of this piece in 40.5. However, of course, this is something where it really depends on what you're going to wear it for and, evidently, the size of your wrist, because there's also nothing worse than seeing a watch that is oversized on somebody and not having the control that it should do, moving around in a way that just looks somewhat ungainly. So what we're going to do is we're going to throw it on my wrist and let's see what the interaction is and whether I stick by my view that actually, for me, 40.5 is the one to go for. So we'll start with the 40.5 because that's the one that I know. Now on my wrist, first blush is that looks pretty much bang on. Why? Because you've got the integrated lugs straight into the bracelet, and there's a gentle curving from the case into the integrated lug and then into the bracelet. I have to say, I just love the way that you've got the links that really provide that extra element of interest and will catch the light. Not quite as ostentatious as something like a Royal Oak bracelet, but nevertheless, you know that this is autorology, no doubt. So hopefully you can see how that fits. I think that fits absolutely perfectly on my wrist. That's the 40.5. Let's have a look at the 38.5. Now, because it's integrated, it still feels very secure. You certainly get that feel that it doesn't feel like it's too small in terms of the way that the watch actually fits my wrist. But the ratio, to my eyes, of the dial thrown into the case, thrown onto the bracelet, compared to the size of my wrist overall, doesn't quite work. Of course, this is purely subjective. Some of you may well say, Ollie, you're talking absolute rubbish. You want the more classy, more subdued look of a 38.5 compared to that larger size. And on occasion, I may well absolutely agree with you. Perfectly, this is my view, my taste, but that's slightly too small for me. Now, I think what is also important is it also depends on your evolution through your watch collecting. Maybe even what you're used to seeing. Let's say your father is someone who's always been into watches, or you've seen him wear the same watch day in, day out. Of course, trends and times have changed. I think actually we're in that position right now. There was a period of time when bigger was better. And for example, 20 odd years ago, when the Royal Oak morphed into the Royal Oak Offshore, that's a prime example of taking what was almost, let's face it, the perfect sports slash dress slash integrated steel bracelet, putting into precious metal and just making it bigger and bolder. I think we're now in a trend of going the opposite way. People looking for something a little bit more discreet, something that isn't quite as, look at me, this is the extra oversized version. And so with everything that I've said in terms of my personal preference and how I view this on my wrist, there may well of course be people out there that say, actually, I prefer that more understated look. And where does that leave us? Well, I think that basically what it says is, you do your thing. If you prefer the 38.5 over the 40.5, you go for it. And you will have your reasons to do so. You're not right, you're not wrong. That's exactly what you want out of your piece and how you're going to wear it. There's something that actually I don't think can be denied. I think Chapek did a wonderful job with the Antarctic, and actually this is the first time I've seen the glacier blue. It is stunning, and if you get the opportunity to have a look at one of these in person, please do, because it's most definitely a worthy addition to the integrated steel sports market. So that's the Chapek Antarctic Glacier Blue, discussion between 38.5mm and 40.5mm. Would love to know what you think, not only about the watch, but also what is your view on the size? Should a man ever wear under 40 or 39mm? And am I right? Is there a trend that watches are getting smaller? I don't know. I'd love to know your views. But in any event, thanks so much for joining. We'll see you next time.